All right, let's talk about something huge happening in India. The country has just completely overhauled its labor laws, and these changes are going to affect a staggering 400 million workers. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down what this new playbook really means for your job, your salary, and even your retirement. Okay, so let's jump right in with what is probably the biggest headline grabber from all these new rules. It's a change that could put more money into the pockets of a whole lot of employees, and way sooner than you'd think. So, could you actually get your gratuity after just 1 year on the job? I mean, for a really long time, the answer to that was a hard no. But for a growing group of workers, that answer has suddenly flipped to a big yes. And trust me, it's a total game changer. And get this, we're not talking about some minor adjustment here. The mandatory waiting period for gratuity for certain employees has been absolutely slashed from 5 whole years down to just one. That is a massive drop. So, to be super clear, this amazing new rule applies to what's called fixed-term employees, or FTEs. Folks who are hired on a contract for a specific project or a set amount of time. They're now entitled to gratuity, which is basically a lump sum thank you payment from their employer. The whole idea here is to put them on a level playing field with permanent employees, giving them the same kinds of benefits. Now, this whole gratuity thing, it's not just some random change they decided to make. It's actually a really important piece of a much, much bigger picture. We're talking about a complete rebuild of India's entire labor framework, one that's been in place for decades. You have to understand, for literally decades, India's labor system was, well, a mess, a tangled web of 29 different laws. A lot of these were super old. We're talking pre-independence, and they were just incredibly complicated for businesses to navigate. So what did they do? They took that entire complicated system and boiled it all down into just 4 comprehensive codes. And here they are. This is the new playbook. You've got one for wages, one for industrial relations, social security, and then another for safety and working conditions. The idea is to take all those old overlapping laws and just simplify the whole shebang. So what's the official reason for all this? The government basically says it's about 3 things. First, bring the laws into the 21st century. Second, make it way easier for businesses to actually follow the rules. And third, and this is a big one, give a social safety net to millions of workers who never had one before. Okay, so that's the big picture, but what does this actually mean for you, for the person on the ground? Because these aren't just legal documents, right? They have very real impacts on different kinds of workers all over the country. This is a really big deal. For the very first time, all those millions of people in India's gig economy, your ride-sharing drivers, your food delivery folks, they're finally being recognized. The law now officially defines what a gig worker is, and it forces those big platform companies to chip into a social security fund just for them. There are also some huge changes for women in the workforce. We're talking legal prohibitions on gender discrimination when it comes to hiring and pay. Plus, it opens the door for women to work night shifts. But, and this is important, only if they agree to it and there are solid safety measures put in place. And what about contract labor? They're getting a big update too. The new rules say they have to get the same benefits and wages as permanent employees. The main company that hires them is now on the hook for their health and welfare. And the hope is that this will make companies think twice and just hire more people directly. Okay, so we've covered some specific groups, but there's one change that could affect pretty much every single salaried employee in the country, and it hits right where it counts, your monthly paycheck. So the big question on everyone's mind, is my take-home pay actually going to go down? And well, for a lot of people, the answer could be yes. And it all comes down to a brand new uniform definition for one little word: wages. So here's the deal. For a long time, some companies would give you a really small basic salary and then pile on a bunch of allowances. Why? Because your retirement fund contributions were often calculated only on that small basic part. This new rule puts a stop to that. It says your basic pay now has to be at least half of your total compensation. No more workarounds. And this is where the trade-off comes in. To follow that 50% rule, your company might have to increase your basic pay. Now that's good news for your retirement savings. Your PF and gratuity will get bigger contributions, but it could mean less cash in your bank account every month. It's that classic short-term pain for long-term gain situation. So you can probably guess that a change this big, it's not going over quietly. In fact, it sparked a massive national debate about who these reforms really help. And the two sides are worlds apart on this. The government is selling it as a historic win-win for everybody. But the big trade unions, they're calling it a direct attack on workers' rights and protections. I mean, just look at this quote. A deceptive fraud against the working people. That's not mincing words, is it? It comes from a joint statement by 10 of the biggest unions, and it really shows you just how deep the opposition is. So what are their biggest worries? Well, a major one is about layoffs. Before, companies with more than 100 workers needed government permission for mass layoffs. Now that number has been tripled to 300. The unions say this just gives companies a green light to hire and fire whenever they want, with a lot less oversight. So you have the government pushing one way and the unions pushing back hard. Where does all of this leave India's 400 million workers? What you should really take away from all this is the fundamental conflict at the heart of these reforms. On one hand, it's a major push to make the job market more flexible and business-friendly, hopefully to bring in more investment. But on the other hand, you have these very real, very deep concerns about job security. And that leaves us with the big, unanswered question. Are we looking at the beginning of a modern labor system, one that's truly fit for the 21st century? Or is this just the start of a whole new battle for the rights of workers in India? That's a question that only time is going to answer.